Right. So first of all, I believe that you all can hear me. Can anyone give me a confirmation on that? Yeah. Yes. Can you all hear me? Right. Okay. Super. Right. Lamai. So on behalf of JMC, I warmly welcome you all for the advanced level English medium seminar series. Right. So this was actually an idea from one of our leading branches, and all the lecturers, the leading lecturers together, we decided to conduct a seminar series to assist you all in the upcoming advanced level exam. And there can be students who are doing 2020 advanced level examination even, and whatever the things we are going to do here will be really important for you all, right? So let me first of all explain the seminar series, right? So this seminar series will be conducted by, as I said, the leading lecturers, Mr. Sanath Handaragama and Anusha Liyanage sir, Darshana Chaturanga sir, like that, and I myself also will be conducting several sessions. So today I'm going to start with accounting standards, especially focusing on leasing, right? Leasing accounting standards. So today we are going to do the session, right? And thereafter, tomorrow, Darshana Chaturanga sir will conduct the accounting target paper, right? That will be on the same timeline, 7 p.m. up until 9:30 p.m. Then on Sunday, you will be having economics target paper by Sanath sir. Then on Monday, you will be having business studies target questions focusing on 31 to 50, right? So to cover up the entire syllabus, focusing on these questions. So again, it continues for the econ target paper that will be on Tuesday, like that it goes on. So please keep a record on your seminar series, the particular days, and you'll have to participate for these seminar series to get the maximum benefit. Lamai. So participate in the live sessions, and then and there take down the notes, and then and there get the knowledge. If you have any questions, clarifications, do not hesitate to pass that either through the chat box, or you all can unmute yourself towards the end of the session. Right. And how you can how can you download the tutes? Let me take you through on that as well. So if you go to JMC website, towards the bottom of the website, Lama, you all can find this more here. Under more, you can find downloads, right? In the JMC website, go to the bottom of it, then you can find more downloads, right? And once you click downloads, there will be number of documents which are available, where you have to go to seminar downloads. And there will be number of seminar tutorials which are available for you to download. And there you can download the SLFRS 16, the lesson which I'm going to do it today, the leasing standard as well, plus the session which we are going to conduct on Sunday, that is Sanath sir's econ tute. Those will be there. So tutes will be uploaded to this downloads, right? So I hope the path is clear for you, right? Without taking that much of time, let's move on to the topic. So first of all, I'll introduce myself. So I'm Sandeepa Jayasekera. So I'm a chartered accountant, as well as I'm CIMA qualified and EET qualified and CMA member as well. And I did my degree from University of Sri Jayawardhanapura under accountancy department, where I was able to receive the gold medal for the most outstanding student as well. And then right now I'm working as the Chief Executive Officer as well as a lecturer of JMC. And after advanced level, if you all want to continue your professional studies with either chartered accountancy or EET, then you will definitely learn under me for the accountancy related subjects. So that's about me, and let's start our session. SLFRS 16 leases, right? Okay. Now, Laman, I know most of you guys have already studied the subject, the topic leasing. So you will have some kind of an idea about leasing standard. Now, the way I'm going to do it is going to be a really an easy way of doing. I'll take you through a scenario. Thereafter, I'll convert that into a question. Then I'll show you how we are supposed to answer the questions. Then I'll directly take you through to the advanced level papers, right? So I'm going to take you through a case study, a scenario based situation, and from that will be converted into a question. Thereafter we will do some past paper questions. The leasing part is really important for you all guys, because in your advanced level paper there will be questions. There can be questions on your MCQ paper, as well as definitely there will be a part on your company accounts, right? The company account, there will be a definite adjustment on this leasing, right? On this lease adjustment. So we need to know how we are supposed to tackle that one. Okay, right. I believe so far so good, no issues at all. If you all have any issue, right, super, you all can put that to the message, right, chat box. Righto. Okay, the way I'm doing is little different, right? So you will get used to my methods once we proceed. Okay, right. So let's take a quick case study. Okay, this is Shehan, right? So this is Shehan, right? Now Shehan has a dream car. Now all of us, right? All of us, you and me, everyone, we have this dream car, isn't it, right? Now Shehan also had a dream car, right? And this particular dream car had a value of rupees 5 million, right? Right? This particular dream car had a value of rupees 5 million. Then මේ කාලේ යන ළමයි ඉතින් වාහනයක කෑල්ලක්වත් ගන්න බැරි වෙයි, right? ගන්න බෑ කොහොමවත්, right? Okay, but think about this situation, this way some way back, let's say, right? 5 million. So this is that particular car, right? It's beautiful, right? Okay. Now the thing is, lamai, Shehan had only 1.5 million, right? Only 15 lakhs in his hand, right? Only 15 lakhs in his hand, right? Now the value of the car is 5 million, right? Value of the car is 5 million. Now Shehan had 1.5 million in his hand. Now what is the amount lacking, right? The deficit is rupees 3.5 million. Laksha Dispahak Madi. Now this is the situation. Now Shehan was thinking what he can do now, right? So this 3.5 million is lacking. What are the options available? He was looking at them, right? So actually Shehan had three options. Shehan had three options. What are the three options? One is to use the savings, right? So one option was to have the savings. Now that is where now Shehan already has 1.5 million. No? So then from that point onwards, continue to save. Right, from whatever the income he is getting after spending his expenses, he need to increase his savings, right? So that way, one fine day, he can reach that 5 million, and using that savings, he can buy that particular car. Now the issue is, if Shehan is going to use that approach, lamai, definitely that will take a long time, right? That will take maybe years, right? Depending on the occupation, depending on the business he is doing, that might take number of years even, right? And so that is really may not be practical. And even let's say after 1 or 2 years, Shehan was able to secure that 35 million as well. Now by the time, definitely the inflation will hit, no? Definitely the car value will go up to like 8 million, no, 9 million. Then there's another amount in deficit. So that this may not be practical, even though it has a zero cost, it has a zero cost, right? It has a zero cost, but it may not be practical. It may not be practical. So what is the next option? Shehan can obtain a loan, lamai. Shehan can obtain a loan. So Shehan can go to a particular bank, then request for a loan facility, right? And then by using that loan value, right, Shehan can purchase the particular car. Let's say the interest rate is somewhere around 8%. Interest rate is somewhere around 8%. Now, really speaking, lamai, obtaining a loan is not that easy. It's really a cumbersome process. Why? You need to find guarantors, right? You need to provide number of documents, right? You need to provide number of documents, and you need to show that you don't have a financial difficulty to obtain a loan. Loan එකක් ගන්න ගියාම අපිට බැංකුවට පෙන්නන්න වෙනවා අපිට loan එකක් ගන්න තරම් අමාරුකමක් නැහැ කියලාත් පෙන්නන්න ඕනේ. So you need to show that you have money as well. So that's a really a difficult process, right? And it takes time as well, right? So that now Shehan thought, okay, now there are a lot of hassles, so that he is not going to go ahead with the loan option. Then the third option is the leasing. Now, third option, in a lease, what will happen, lamai? Right? In a lease, there's less documents, lamai. Right? Less documents, and you don't have to find the guarantors as well. You don't need guarantors, and less documents as well. And you all know that there are certain leasing companies, they provide 1-day leasing, right? Overnight leasing. So if you go to the leasing company and submit all the documents and all, within the day you can obtain that lease facility, right? So that option may look like it's a viable solution, but right, even though it is easy to obtain and all, but it's a little bit costly, right? So somewhere around, let's say for an example, the interest rate is 10%. Interest rate is 10%. Now 0 to 8% to 10%, right? Little costly, but the process is less cumbersome, right? So that now Shihan thought he badly wants his dream car, right? That 5 million worth of dream car. So the most appropriate option, most suitable option available is to go ahead with a leasing facility, right? Now remember the facts in this sum, guys, because we are going to convert this into a question. I'm going to teach you the theory parts and everything with this question, right? So and you are never going to forget about it. So this is one of the methods I'm using, right? Okay. Now the Shihan, right? Shihan was here. Shihan went to let's say a leasing company. For an example, we'll take LB Lamai, right? So Shihan went to LB Finance, right? LB Finance and asked for a lease facility. Now Shihan went on to LB and said, look LB, now I have a dream car and that dream car has a value of rupees 5 million. I have rupees 1.5 million in my hand. So I'm lacking 3.5 million. Can you give me a leasing facility for that 3.5 million? So that Shihan asked. Then LB did a quick assessment. Okay, this guy looks okay and his reports are also fine. He has 1.5 million in hand. So it seemed to be that it's a viable leasing product that we can go ahead with. So that LB said, okay, so we are quite okay with it. So on behalf of you, so you are going to give 3.5 million, the amount you are lack, right? The amount you are lacking, we are going to give that 3.5 million to that vehicle seller. On behalf of you, we are going to give that 3.5 million to that vehicle seller. But, right, you have to repay. So on behalf of you, I'm giving a facility, no? It's kind of a loan, no, Lamai? Without giving money, you are giving an asset. Without giving money, you are giving an asset, right? So that LB said, look here, on behalf of you, right? On behalf of you, Shihan, so I'm giving 3.5 million of my money to that vehicle seller, right? I want it back. That 3.5 million, I need it back. So you need to repay that 3.5 million within a period of 3 years. Let's say within a period of 3 years with an interest rate of 10%. Right? It's a loan, no? So you are supposed to charge an interest as well, no? That is the business of the leasing company, no? Right? Okay. Then what he said, okay, 3.5 million to the vehicle seller. So you have to pay it within 3 years with a 10% interest rate. 10% interest rate. Now you have to remember the facts, huh? You have to remember the facts. 3.5 million lease facility, 3 years, 10% interest rate. Now, I want you all to easily understand, Lamai, this is a loan. Leasing is not a different thing. It's not a difficult thing. It's also a loan, Lamai. It's also a loan, but instead of cash, you are getting an asset. Instead of cash, you are getting an asset. Instead of cash, right, you are getting an asset. Instead of cash, you are getting an asset, right? So if you can understand that part, Lamai, that will be really easy for you to decide and understand the accounting treatment as well, right? Okay, the story continues, right? Story continues. Now Shihan is here and LB is here. Now LB is saying to Shihan, now look here Shihan, I trusted you and I gave you 3.5 million. I gave that 3.5 million to the vehicle seller. No, now I need kind of a hold, right? Now I'm not taking any guarantors. I'm not taking any other asset as a security. So I need a kind of a hold over this facility. Right? Now LB is saying. So what we are going to do here is, Shihan, now I will give that 3.5 million on behalf of you to the vehicle seller, but over that 3 years period, the owner of the vehicle, the name should be appeared as LB Finance. Mage nama tamai aitikara vidira tiyenna ඕනේ කියලා LB එක කියනවා. Now LB is saying to Shihan, look here Shihan, So on behalf of you, I'm paying 3.5 million now. So I need the ownership of the vehicle for the 3 years. You can continue your payments. You can use the asset. No worries at all. ඔයා මේ පදින්නේ මං උනාට ගත්ත LB එකෙන් කියලා බෝඩ් එකක් ගහන් යන්න ඕනේ නැහැ. You can use it. It's no issue at all, right? So you are allowed to use it for the remaining 3 years. But the ownership lies with me. If you are failing the payments, then I am entitled to take back that vehicle. එහෙනම් මට අයිතිය තියෙනවා ඔය වාහනේ ආපහු සැරයක් අරගන්න. So I have an original key. So there are 2 keys. One is with LB, other one is with Shihan. So if Shihan is failing the payments, generally for like 3 installments, then what does this LB Finance does is they send their people, they take over the possession of that vehicle, because they are the owners. LB is the owners for the 3 years. Then LB said, look here Shihan, after the 3 years, once you have paid everything, we don't have any hesitation that we can pass you the ownership. Once you have paid everything, once you have paid that 3.5 million loan with the interest, loan plus interest, then we don't have any hesitation. Upon your request, we will send a letter so that you can get the ownership. Right? Okay? Right. Now let's say what has happened, the dialogue between, as a holdover on the loan, until the end of 3 years, the ownership of the vehicle needs to be under LB Finance. Shihan can use the vehicle, even though the ownership is with LB Finance. But if Shihan does not pay, LB Finance would come and take over the vehicle using the key they have. So that's a fair adjustment, right? So you are giving a loan, so you need to have a kind of a hold. Right? So how can they recover? That is their business. They need to have a hold. So the Shihan agreed. Shihan said that's a fair adjustment. I'm agreeing with it. So that as per the terms and conditions, Shihan has agreed. Shihan is making the down payment of 1.5 million. Remaining 3.5 million will be provided by LB, and that is under a period of a 3-year contract. So over the 3 years, Shihan need to repay that loan along with the interest. Over the 3 years, ownership lies with LB. Once everything is being paid, Shihan can obtain the ownership. Right? So now what has happened? Shihan signed and everything was perfectly done. So Shihan got his car. So his car and his dog they are using the car for this 3 years period. So Shihan made all the payments on the due dates without any issue. Right? Now by end of 3 years, Shihan had paid 4.2 million. Shihan obtained only 3.5 million from LB. After 3 years, Shihan has paid 4.2 million. Right? Shihan obtained the loan of 3.5 million. Once everything is repaid, Shihan has paid 4.2 million. So it seems Shihan has paid extra 700,000. Shihan has paid extra 700,000. So I want an answer. What is that? Shihan has paid extra 700,000. What is that? Interest. Perfect. Interest. Right? Super. Right? Okay. There are certain set of questions. Ownership is general. Right. Yeah. Okay. Right. Super. So it's interest. Like we said, during that 3 years only, the ownership lies with LB. Now, during the 3 years, even though the ownership is with LB, vehicle was used by Shihan. Shihan was using, right? And Shihan has paid all the amount, that loan plus the interest of 700,000. Now, once everything is being paid, so with the interest is being also paid, everything is paid, Shihan went back to LB. And said, LB, look here, as agreed, I have paid everything to the cent. I have paid everything. The lease facility along with the interest I have paid. Now issue me a clearance certificate. So then LB issued a clearance certificate. Now with that document, Shihan went to the motor vehicle registration department, submitted the document and obtained the ownership. Right? Okay? So Shihan got the ownership. Now what you will have learned is this is reality. මේක තමයි සත්‍ය ලෝකේ වෙන දේ ළමයි. Right? This is really happening. Right? Now, I myself has obtained certain vehicles under a lease arrangement. This is exactly what is happening, right? This is exactly what is happening, right? So you need to have that idea, right? Okay. Now, I'm going to put that into a separate format. Look here. Now, these are really important. One students have asked that they need to know the basics as well. These are the basics. Huh? These are the basics. Don't worry. So once you are with me over the entire session, Lamai, I will ensure, I will guarantee you that you will have a very good knowledge. No worries at all. Right. Okay. Now we'll look at this transaction. So we had LB. LB Finance was there. And we had Shihan, right? So we had Shihan. So LB Finance was there. LB Finance was the owner of the car. And we had Shihan. Now Shihan is the party who was using the car. Shihan was using the car. LB was owning the car. Shihan was using the car, the user of the car. Now in between LB Finance and Shihan, they had a 3-year contract. They had a 3-year contract. 3-year contract. They had a 3-year contract. Right. Now, as per this contract, Lamai, did LB Finance handed over the ownership of the vehicle, or is it the right to use it? Ownership was it ownership transferred or right to use? Right? Right of use. The correct word should be right of use. Right? Right of use. Now, really speaking, Lamai, LB Finance, right? They did not give the ownership or the entitlement, Lamai. No, they kept the ownership as a holder. But they transferred was the right of use asset. Right of use asset. Shihan obtained a right of use asset. Right of use in the car. Right? Yagi namata ne. Namata ne. Habe Shihan car ke loge ne anava Sindhu aage ne anava AC එක දාගෙන යනවා ඕන තැනක නවත්තනවා. So Shihan was taking the decisions. Shihan was enjoying, right, at the comfort of the car. But he had only a right to use the car over the 3 years. After the 3 years only you are getting the ownership. But during the contract period, 3 years, Shihan was having right of use in the asset. Right? Shihan was having right of use the asset. Okay? Right of use the asset. So Shihan was having right of use in the asset. These are really, really important terms. Right of use in the asset. Again, වත්කම භාවිතා කරන්න අයිතියක් තමයි ශිහාන්ට තිබුණේ. වත්කම නීත්‍යානුකූල අයිතියක් තිබුණේ නැහැ. නීත්‍යානුකූලව අයිති LBට. ශිහාන්ට ආවේ වත්කම පාවිච්චි කරන අයිතිය. Right of use asset only. Right? Then, on behalf of this right of use asset, Shihan was making the payments, Lamai. Shihan was making the lease installments. Shihan was making the lease installments. Now, this is a transaction where one party, LB, owner of the asset, we call it lessor. Owner of the asset, we call it lessor. LB is the lessor. Lessor, over the agreed period, lessor is transferring the right of use asset. Lessor is transferring the right of use asset to the user of that asset, lessee. And for that, lessee is making the lease installments. Lessee is making the lease installments. Now I'm going to remove Shihan and LB from the scenario. Now you can have the definition. It's pretty clear, Lamai. What is the definition of a lease? The owner of the asset or the lessor is transferring the right of use asset to the lessee, the user of the asset, for an agreed period of time over a lease consideration, over a lease installment. So that the way that I told you, right, is really easy. Even if you are studying some definitions, Lamai, now I'm doing certain other sessions, especially on study techniques and all. So that is something I'm quite passionate about, right? So if you are studying on definitions, like word to word memorizing, so you won't be able to memorize those things, Lamai. So in our brain, that goes to a separate part called prefrontal cortex. That is your working memory. It's so short term. If you are trying to apply that memorizing technique, that won't work. But if you can have the logic, the logical approach, right? If you can put into a particular small example, small story, right? Then you are going to remember it. Really speaking, I don't remember the definition. But I remember the story of LB and Shihan, so that I can put the words, right? So the owner of the asset, the lessor, is transferring the right of use asset to the lessee, the user of the asset, over an agreed period for an agreed lease consideration. So that's the definition. That's really an easy way to remember the definitions as well. Now you'll have learned the basics. You'll have learned the basics. Now what I'm going to do is lamai, right? So I'm going to do, what I'm going to do is, right? So some other case studies are also there, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go for a question now. From this particular case study, I'm going to do a question, right? Okay. Okay, right? So I hope you all have the tute with you. So no worries, tute is also appearing in the screen as well. Now the case study, the exact case study which we have studied, right? Now we are going to convert that into a question. And we will see how we are going to do the accounting part. Now remember, Lamai, in advanced level, the accounting part is limited to the lessee's point of view. So the lessor's point of view is not there in the advanced level syllabus. So we are going to learn how Shihan is going to recognize this particular transaction. Okay, right. Okay, Lamai, so far so good. Issues, clarifications, concerns. What happens if we paid 80% money and then couldn't pay the remaining? Will there be any amount be refunded? Good question, Nasib. If you have paid 80% of the facility but you couldn't pay the remaining amount, then the owner, LB Finance, would take over the asset. LB Finance would auction the asset. Once they receive the money, they will recover their due amount and the balance will be transferred to the Shihan or the user of the asset. Good. Okay. Right. Super. Right. So far so good though. Any issues, clarifications, concerns? Right. One question is asked, sir, if interest is 10% of 3.5 million, it should be 350,000. How it is 700,000? Puta, now this question is about 3 years now. So the 3-year total interest is 700,000. You are correct. You are absolutely correct. 350,000 is the first year interest, right? First year interest. Super. Right. Okay. Amai, Prashna Gatalu. Right. Super. Right. No issues. Prashnak ne? Avlak. So what if the vehicle met with an accident within that 3 years? Good. So if the vehicle met with an accident, then it's the responsibility of the user, Lamai. So he need to rectify, right? So specifically if the vehicle is insured, then it's a matter of the insurance company to do the rest of it. But the owner, the LB Finance, they don't have any other responsibility. So the user is the one who is using the asset. If that asset met with an accident, they need to rectify that one. So that expense and everything they need to bear, right? Okay, right. So one student is asking, then the interest is 1050. No, right? Yeah, super. Interest is not 1050. It's not 350,000 into 3. We will learn. It's a good question. We will learn. How can you calculate the interest and all? Right. So if we had paid only 1 year, if they took back. So if we had paid only 1 year, then if they took back, what will happen? Same thing, Hafsa, right? There are certain questions I'll answer as well, right? What if you have paid only 1 year and you are unable to pay? What will happen? The leasing company will take over the asset. They will auction the asset. They will sell, and out of the money received, they will recover their lease facility outstanding. Remaining amount will be transferred to the customer. Insurance will go under the user's name. Right, generally it is under the owner's name, LB's name, but the payment will be done by the user. Insurance එක ගන්න අපි අයිතිකාරයවන LB ගේ නමට, හැබැයි payments ඔක්කොම කරන්නේ manage කරන්නේ අපි. Right. If the lessor is given the car back before 3 years, do they get money back at the lessor pay? If the lessor is given the car back before 3 years, do they get any money back at the lessor paid? I think the question is not clear. Is it lessor or lessee? Right. Okay. Okay. Right. අපි ප්‍රශ්න ටික දැන් load කරලා තියාගන්න. අපි ඊළඟ session එකේදී ගමු. Now, once I am doing the session for like 40 to 50 minutes, I will ask questions. ඊළඟට මම දකින ප්‍රශ්න වලට මම ටක් ගාලා උත්තර දෙනවා. Then I will proceed. Otherwise, I won't be able to manage the time. Okay. We'll read the question now. We'll read the question. Shihan obtained a motor vehicle. Yes, we know already. Motor vehicle on 1st of April 2017. 1st of April 2017. 1st of April 2017 under a lease agreement with LB Finance PLC. According to the agreement, lease period is 3 years. Lease period is 3 years. Down payment rupees 1.5 5 million. Down payment rupees 1.5 million. The remaining amount is to be paid in 3 equal installments of rupees 1.4 million annually. All installments are to be paid in arrears. Paid in arrears. The meaning of paid in arrears means at the end of the period. If we are using, there are two terms, Lamai. There are two terms that we have to learn. One is paid in arrears. Other one is paid in advance. Paid in advance. So if it is paid in arrears, Lamai, that is at the end of the period. That is end of the period. If it is paid in advance, that is at the beginning of the period. If they are using the term paid in arrears, that is at the end of the period. If they are using the term paid in advance, that is at the beginning of the period. At the beginning of the period. Right? Okay. Now here it is at the end of the period. Right? The useful life is 5 years. Lease period is 3 years. Useful life is 5 years. Right? The present value of the unpaid lease payments. Now they are using a quite different term. Present value of the unpaid lease payments was rupees 3.5 million. Was rupees 3.5 million. What was that? Present value of unpaid lease payments. Present value of unpaid lease payments is 3.5 million. Okay, what is that? Right? Now, can you remember what was the lease loan value, lease facility obtained by Shihan Lamai through LB? It was exactly this 3.5 million, right? So present value of unpaid lease payments is another word for the lease loan, Lamai. Right? The lease loan value is another word for this present value of unpaid lease installment. Present value of unpaid lease installments. Now, in your exam paper, if you happen to see a term like present value of unpaid lease payments, don't worry, it's about your lease loan value. Lease loan value. Don't worry. That is the meaning of it. Right? Okay. 3.5 million. Interest rate was 10%. The interest included in the first installment. Interest included in the first installment and the second installment is 350,000 and 245,000. Now you know that our first installment, right? First installment of this 1.4 million, what they are saying is that include an interest. That include an interest of 350,000. Then what is the remaining amount? 1,050,000, right? Then the remaining amount is 1,050,000. In the second installment, right? In the second installment, it's also 1,400,000. 1,400,000 of that. What they are saying is interest is 245,000. 245,000. 245,000. 245,000. So then the remaining amount from 1.4 million, if you deduct 1,245,000, it will be 1,155,000. Right. Okay. Now, based on the information given here, what they are saying is the interest included in the first installment. What is the value of installment? 1.4 million. The interest included in the first installment is 350,000. Then what is the remaining amount? 1,050,000. In the second installment, it's 245,000. So that means of the installment 1,400,000, interest is 245,000. Then the remaining amount is 1,155,000. Right? I'm just looking at the figures and try to understand what is the figures, what are the information given here. Right? Okay. So don't worry. This is the first question. We are going to do some other questions as well. So if you find it, a little bit complicated or difficult, don't worry at all. You are going to learn it. Right? Okay. Now we know that Shihan and LB Finance, down payment 1.5, lease period 3 years, equal installment 1.4. The loan value is 3.5, interest rate is 10%, and the interest included in the two installments given to us, first installment 350, second installment 245. So what we have been asked, you are supposed to show the accounting entries for the year ended 31st of March 2008 and the extracts of the statement of financial position and statement of profit or loss for that date. So you are supposed to show the account statement of financial position extract and the P&L extract, as well as the accounting entries, right? As well as the accounting entries, right? Okay, if there's anything that you want to take it down, just take them down, right? Okay, right. Okay, so you all have ඔයාලට තියෙන ප්‍රශ්න ළමයි මම හිතන්නේ මේ කාටවත් නැතුව ඇති. ශිහාන් මැරුණොත් මොකද වෙන්නේ? What if Shihan dies? What if car is stolen? Right? There's a lot of other discussions, right? We will take you through those discussions once you come to some other professional courses lamai. We will stick to the advanced level, the relevant levels lamai, because there's a lengthy discussion. So what happens if the car is stolen? What happens if the owner dies? Then what will happen to the beneficiaries and all that goes on, right? We will stick to our framework. Okay, now what I'm going to do is something that you all have to do as well, right? I'm going to put up the information into a small format lamai. Information in that particular question, I'm going to put that into a small format. Now you have to do it along with me. This is something that I'm doing lamai. Once I read the question, I try to create kind of a mind map, kind of a concept map of the important information in that question, so that I can easily derive the answers. So we are going to do that together. Right? We are going to do that together, right? Okay. Now look here, right? Now in this story we had Shihan. This is Shihan lamai, right? And Shihan had his so-called dream car. This is that dream car, right? So Shihan had his dream car, and another party came into play, that is LB, right? Right? So you'll have to do it with me. Take the piece of paper and do whatever the thing, write whatever the thing I'm writing. Huh? Okay. Now what has happened? In order to get this particular car, Shihan made a payment of 1.5 million. Shihan made a payment of 1.5 million. Now what is that? That is the down payment. That is the down payment, right? That is the down payment. Okay, my handwriting may be a little bad, but I'm repeating the same thing, right? So Shihan made 1.5 million down payment, right? Now really speaking, car had a value of rupees 5 million. No? This car had a value of rupees 5 million. This car had a useful life of, 5 years, right? Car had a useful life of 5 years as well. So car had a value of rupees 5 million and it had a useful life of 5 years. So Shihan paid 1.5 million as the down payment, right? Right? And the remaining amount was paid on behalf of Shihan, right? This rupees 3.5 million was paid by LB Finance at an interest rate of 10%. At an interest rate of 10%. So this is the loan value. We'll call it the lease loan, right? So lease loan value 3.5 million was paid by LB Finance. Okay, right? So Shihan paid 1.5. and from the leasing facility they obtained 3.5, and the 5 million worth of car was obtained. So what has happened then? The car was obtained under the ownership of, ownership was transferred to LB Finance, and LB Finance gave the right of use in the asset. Right? Right of use in the asset. Right of use in the asset. Right? Right of use in the asset. Okay? Right of use in the asset. Ownership, right of use in the asset. This is what exactly happened. Right? Okay? Now, as per the information given, the loan facility obtained of 3.5 million needs to be repaid in 3 equal installments, 1,400,000 each. So you have to repay 1,400,000 each. So that into 3, that is 4,200,000. 4,200,000. The total amount to be repaid is 4,200,000. 4,200,000. Right? Now, of these, when you are repaying, Lamai, right, the loan is being repaid. Loan repayment is 3.5 million. 3.5 million is the loan repayment. Then what is the balancing figure? Balancing figure is interest. Balancing figure is interest, rupees 700,000. Rupees 700,000 is the interest. Right? 700,000 is the interest. So loan value 1.4 million into 3 is 4.2 million. The loan obtained was 3.5 million, and the remaining amount, the excess paid by Shihan to LB, is the interest. Excess paid by Shihan to leasing company is interest. Excess value is interest. Okay, right. I hope you will have taken down this part so far. Right. I'm going to change the color. Right. Okay. Right. Now the transaction is pretty clear. LB Shihan paid 1.5 million and LB put 3.5 million, and they obtained the facility. Right. Now, from Shihan's point of view, Lamai, now Shihan has a loan commitment, no, Shihan has a lease liability. Shihan has a lease liability. Ne? Shihan has a lease liability. Shihan has a lease liability. Shihan has a lease liability. Right. Shihan has a commitment, right? Shihan obtained a lease facility of 3.5 million. Shihan has a lease liability. Now we'll see how this lease liability will proceed, how will this lease liability progress. Right. So this transaction happened on 1st of April 2007. So the lease liability value was 3.5 million. 3.5 million was the loan value. The lease liability 3.5 million. Right. Okay. Now Shihan is going to make the first payment at the end of the year. Shihan is going to make the first payment at the end of the year. That means, Lamai, this loan value, this lease liability will be there as it is for entire year. This 3.5 million will be there as it is for the entire financial year. Shihan is going to make a payment towards the end of the period. That is what we learn, no? In arrears, no? Towards the end of the period only Shihan will pay. So this lease value, this lease liability will be there for an entire year. Then what will happen? You are going to accumulate interest on it. You are going to accumulate interest on it. For whole year, you are going to accumulate interest. Right? So for the year 2007-8, Lamai, you are going to accumulate interest. You are going to accumulate interest. Right? You are going to accumulate interest. So how we are supposed to calculate the interest? Loan value is 3.5 million, that at 10%, right? 10%. So loan value into interest rate. So that is going to be 350,000, right? 350,000. So how we are calculating the interest means loan value into the interest rate. So that is 1 year, so that is multiplied by 1. So the 350,000 is the interest. 350,000. Right. Then we will add them together. What is going to be the value? So this is going to be 3,850,000. 3,850,000. 3,850,000 is going to be the value. Okay. Right. Now you started with 3.5. You accrued an interest. You accrued an interest over the year of 350,000. Now the loan value became 3,850,000 inclusive of interest. Inclusive of interest. Then what will happen? Now we are at the end of the year. No? Now Shihan is making the lease installment payment. Shihan is making the lease installment payment. So on 31st of March 2008, right? Lease installment is being paid. Installment is being paid. Right? What is the installment value? 1,400,000. So you are going to pay 1,400,000. You are going to pay 1,400,000 lease installment. Right? Now we have learned, Lamai, when you are paying the lease installment, this includes basically two parts. What are the two parts? You are going to pay the interest. You are going to pay the interest 350,000. The accumulated interest over the year will be repaid. The interest accumulated for the year 2007-8 will be paid when you are making the installment payment. And other than the interest, you are going to repay the loan obtained. You are going to repay the lease facility obtained. So the remaining amount is a lease repayment. It's a lease repayment, Lamai. It's a lease repayment of 1,050,000. 1,050,000 will be repaid. That is the loan repayment amount. Of this 1.4 million, you are going to pay the interest 350,000, which was accumulated over the year, as well as the loan repayment of 1,050,000. 1,050,000. Right? Now, thus, the loan value is going to become 2,450,000. 2,450,000. 2,450,000. Right? Now that is the first year transaction. You started with 3.5. You accrued an interest of 350. Then you repaid the installment 1.4. And finally, the remaining loan balance is 2,450,000. Always remember, guys, interest is something that accumulates with the passage of the time. You can't account for the future interest. You can't book for the future interest. It's an expense that arrives with the passage of the time. So the current year, 1 year has gone, you accumulated interest and that has been paid. That has been paid. Okay, right. Now we'll continue for the next year. We'll continue for the next year. Now this is the balance as at 1st of April 2008. Then we will calculate the second year interest. We'll calculate the second year interest. So how to calculate the second year interest? 2,450,000 multiplied by 10%, right? Now you are not going to calculate the interest for the 3.5 million. Now 3.5 million out of that loan, 1,050,000 is being paid. From this 3.5 million, when you deduct 1,050,000, you will arrive at 2,450,000. So when the loan is being paid, you are not supposed to pay the interest for the original value. So loan is being paid. You are paying interest for the reduced balance, right? You are paying the interest for the remaining loan balance, the outstanding loan balance. Now that is why one student asked the question, why it is not 350,000 into 3? No, you are repaying the loan. When you are paying the loan, you have to calculate the interest for the remaining loan balance, not to the original balance. Okay. So you obtain 3.5 and on top of that 3.5, you accumulated 350. When you paid 1.4, you paid that interest as well as the capital repayment, loan repayment. Now the loan balance is not 3.5. Now it is 2,450,000. For that, you have to accumulate the interest 245,000, right? So that this became 245,000. This is the second year interest. Can you remember that was given in the question, right? We highlighted 245,000, how it was arrived at. Okay, right. Now we'll see what will be the total inclusive of interest. This is 5, 9, 6, 2,695,000. 2,695,000 inclusive of second year interest. Then on 31st of March 2009, you are paying the second installment. That is 1,400,000. You are paying the second installment. You are paying the second installment. right? Now we have learned that when you are making the second installment, that includes two things, right? What are the two things? The second year interest will be repaid. So the second year interest will be repaid 245,000 plus you are going to repay the loan. You are going to repay the loan, Lamai. Now, of the loan balance, 2,450,000 was remaining. It was accumulated with 245,000 interest. When you are making the second installment payment, you are going to repay the interest plus a loan repayment, lease repayment. So a lease repayment will be paid. The difference, you know that 1.4 million minus 245,000 is 1,155,000. This is a lease repayment from the second installment. Out of the second installment, you are going to repay 1,155,000. So now the residual loan value will become and this is 95,000, right? 1,295,000. The remaining loan balance is going to become 1,295,000, right? Now you can go on and continue for the third year. That is not necessary, Lamai. So in a question, if they are asking for a particular period, Lamai, continue this calculation for another year. For an example, right? If the question is about 3-year calculation, you have been asked about what will happen at the end of the first year. Then continue the calculation for the first year and the second year only. No need to calculate the third year. If the question is about a 4-year lease period, they are asking at the second year end situation, then you need to calculate first year, second year and third year. So 1 year ahead, you have to do the calculation. සමහර කට්ටිය මේකේ third year cal කරගෙන යනකොට ඕකේ interest එකයි මං කිව්ව එක අතර පොඩි වෙනසක් එනවා ළමයි decimal difference එකක් 25000ක් විතර එනවා. Right? Ideally මේකේ 110 නෙවෙයි interest rate එක 10යි points ගානක් තියෙනවා. That is why that difference is coming. මම මේක මගේ note එකේ වෙනම දාලා තියෙනවා. If you are going to continue the session, continue the calculation, there will be a small difference. That is because of decimals. Forget about it. ඒව ගැන හිතන්න යන්න එපා. Right. හරි. මෙතෙන්ට වෙනකල් okayද? Right. There are plenty of other questions. Why we are adding interest in second year? It is already included in the installment. We are taking the interest included in the original amount when calculating the interest. Well understood. Right, you will have a lot of can I please know how did we get the lease repayment amount? Lease repayment amount, that is the difference. Someone is asking how did we get the lease repayment amount? So this is 1,400,000 minus 350,000. So this is also the difference. 1,400,000 minus 245,000. Now once again I'm explaining. Most of the people you are overthinking. ඔයගොල්ලෝ ටිකක් වැඩිපුර හිතනවා. මට සිරි මේමයි කියලා. වැඩිපුර හිතන්න එපා. So make your life simple ළමයි. ඔයාලගේ මේ ජීවිතේ සරල කරගන්න. Overthinking යන්න එපා. I can see some students are thinking beyond. That's good. That's in a way good, but not to this level. A level වලට එච්චර දුරට හිතන්න යන්න එපා. Right? අපි ඒක හිතමු පස්සේ කාලෙක professional courses කරනකොට. Right? Okay. Now look here. You obtain a loan facility and you are accumulating interest. So right, so interest you have to accumulate, no, you have to pay for it, no. So you are accumulating interest 10%, 350,000. So the loan value became 3,850,000. Then you are repaying the installment, no. When you are repaying, you are paying the interest accumulated plus the loan repayment. So that is 1,050,000. So the loan value became 2,450,000. We are calculating the second year with a purpose. So we are continuing the calculation for the second year. So then the second year interest will be the remaining loan balance into interest rate 245,000. When you are paying the second year installment 1,400,000, that includes the interest 245,000 and the loan repayment, lease repayment 1,155,000. That is the basic difference between these two. So towards the end of the second year, the loan value became 1,295,000. 1,295,000. Right? Stick to fundamentals. Right? Stick to what is given here. Right? Don't worry. Right? So we are trying to get the maximum marks in your company account sum. Right. Okay. Now this part is clear. This part is clear. I hope you all have taken down that one as well. Right. Now one part is done. So let me take a different color. Right. Okay. So let me take the color purple. Right. Right. One student is asking, why are we adding the second year interest? That is already included in the installment. Installment is something you are paying, Puta. Right? So you have to add that one and pay. Right? So you have to add it, then you can pay. So that is why we added, then we paid. Okay? Right? Because interest is not something included in this 3.5 million. May loan එක ඇතුළේ interest එක නැහැ. Interest එක එන්නේ passage of time. Interest will be accrued with the passage of the time. So you have to add. It's an expense incurred with passage of the time. Then let's say, right? So you have borrowed money from a friend, right? එතකොට ඔයා යාළුවෙක්ගෙන් ණයක් ගන්නවා 1000ක්. right? එතකොට ළමයි මේ 1000ට පොලිය ඇඩ් වෙන්නේ කාලය ගත වෙනවත් එක්ක මේ අවුරුද්දක් ඉවරලා යාළුවා කියයි. So once 1 year is over, your friend will say, look here, that 1000 plus I need another 100 rupees. That is interest. Second, 2 years later he will say 1000 plus I need 200 rupees. So with the passage of the time you have to add interest. Right. I hope that part is clear. Right. Now we are going to discuss the other aspect of it. Now one side, our Shihan had a lease commitment of 3.5. We dealt with it. Right. Now look at the right of use asset. Right. Now look at the right of use asset. Right of use asset. Now look at the right of use asset. Right. Now look at the right of use asset, Puta. Right. Now think about it. Now Shihan wanted his dream car, right? So in order to get that dream car, Shihan made 1.5 million out of his own money. In order to get the dream car, Shihan made a payment of 1.5 million of his own money. Plus Shihan obtained a lease facility of 3.5 million. So in order to get that right of use asset, මේ car එක පාවිච්චි කරන අයිතිය ගන්න. Totally Shihan has paid 1.5 million plus the 3.5 million from the lease, total together 5 million. So the right of use asset, Shihan made a down payment, lamai. Shihan made a down payment of 1.5 million. Shihan made a down payment of 1.5 million. And Shihan obtained a lease liability. Shihan obtained a lease liability of 3.5 million. 3.5 million. So the total value of the right of use asset is 5 million. Total value of the right of use asset is 5 million. Total value of the right of use asset is 5 million. Right? Okay. Total value of the right of use asset is 5 million. Right. Okay. So Shihan has a right of use asset he obtained by paying 1.5 million out of his pocket, as well as 3.5 million through LB. I hope that part is clear. Now I'll come to a different discussion where I will connect that discussion to the right of use asset. Right. Okay. Now we have to be very careful here. So you have to be very careful. Right. Now regarding the ownership. Right. Regarding the ownership. Right. Ownership. In the lease agreements, there can be two situations. There can be one particular type of a lease agreements where you are getting the ownership towards the end of the lease period, such as the Shihan's vehicle. So there can be two situations. One situation is where you are getting the ownership. Ownership is transferred. Ownership is transferred. And there can be another situation where ownership is not transferred. Ownership is not transferred. Right? Now think about a house being leased out. Building rent out kara kela. Think about a situation you have leased out a building. Let's say now you have this World Trade Center, no, WTC, no. Now in the World Trade Center, you are going to lease out a particular, let's say a particular floor, entire floor. You are going to lease out an entire floor. Let's say for a period of 5 years. You are going to lease out an entire floor for a period of 5 years. Now, once the 5 years is over, can you ask from the owner? Owner is Overseas Realty Company, Overseas Realty PLC. Can you ask from the overseas realty company, can I have the ownership? I have paid 5-year lease. No, you won't get the ownership. Now, such lease agreements, they don't transfer the ownership, right? There are basically two types of agreements, Lamai, especially leasing. There are certain types that transfers the ownership, Lamai, and certain types are there, they don't transfer. A typical example would be a vehicle lease, they generally transfer the ownership. A building lease, they don't transfer the ownership. A typical example. Right, let me take a different color. Okay, right? Okay, guys. Now, I want your help here. We'll stick to our example. Ownership is being transferred. Ownership is being transferred, right? Ownership is being transferred. I want your help, huh? Right. Now, Shihan got the car, right? Shihan got his dream car. The lease period is 3 years. What will happen at the end of the 3 years? Shihan will definitely he will pay the amount. Towards the end of the 3rd year, Shihan will go to LB Finance and obtain that clearance certificate, and he will hand it over to the motor vehicle registration department and transfer the ownership, and he will continue to use it. He will continue to use it. Now, this particular motor vehicle, Shihan's dream car, has a useful life of 5 years. No, Shihan's dream car has a useful life of 5 years. Lease period is 3 years. Now, my question is really important. Shihan is going to use the car. Is it for 3 years or for 5 years? Now, don't overthink. Just randomly think. Is it 3 years or 5 years? 5 years, right? You are going to use it for the 5 years. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Super. 5 years, Lamai. Shihan leased out for that 3-year period. Towards the end of the lease period, you are getting the ownership and you are going to use it, right? Now, a critical question. Let's say Shihan is going to use this vehicle for his tourism business. He is going to use his vehicle for this tourism business and to generate revenue. Now, a critical question. So, Shihan will be getting revenue over a period of how many years? Shihan to revenue hambena avrudu kiyak hamba weda? Me car එකෙන් එයා revenue generate කරනවා. සුද්ධ දාගෙන සුද්ධිය දාගෙන එයා අරගෙන යනවා. So he is going to generate how many years? Yeah, super. 5 years, right? Super. Now, Shihan obtained the car over a period of 3-year lease agreement. But since the ownership is being transferred, Shihan is going to use the car for 5-year economic life. And over that 5-year period, Shihan is going to generate an income. Shihan can use it for his business. Shihan can put that car for Uber. Shihan can put that car for Pick Me. Shihan can have a rent-a-car service. Shihan can use that car for his administration purpose. So Shihan is going to earn economic benefits over that 5-year period, right? Shihan is going to generate economic benefits over that 5-year period. Now, for this car, what is the cost to Shihan? Shihan has a cost එක කීයද ළමයි? Right? Cost එක කීයද? Shihan has a cost එක කීයද? Right? 5 million. Super. Right? 5 million. Super. Lamai. Now, you all have learned an accounting concept. You all have learned an accounting concept called matching concept. What does it say? You need to match your expenses with the relevant revenue. You need to match your expenses with the relevant revenue. For this particular car, in order to get the right of use asset, Shihan has spent 5 million. 1.5 million out of his pocket, another 3.5 million from a lease liability. And since the ownership is being transferred, Shihan is going to use that asset for the 5-year period. Then Shihan is going to generate income. Shihan is going to generate revenue over that 5-year period. Therefore, as per the matching concept, where you need to match your expense against the relevant revenue, this 5 million you need to depreciate over that 5-year period. Are we clear? So since the ownership is being transferred, you are going to depreciate over the useful life. You are going to depreciate over the useful life. You are going to depreciate over the useful life. What is the underlying accounting concept? Matching. Underlying accounting concept is matching. Okay, super. Right? I hope you are quite okay with it. right? This part. Right? So then what will happen? Let me conclude on this aspect. Make a conclude කරලා ඉන්නම් ඉතිරි ටිකට theory ටික කතා කරන්න. So we'll calculate the depreciation ළමයි. We'll calculate the depreciation, that is 5 million divided by 5 years, that is going to be 1 million. So the carrying value or the net book value is going to be 4 million. Super. The net book value is going to be 4 million, right? Okay. Net book value is going to be 4 million. Okay, right. Net book value, carrying value, machine value, everything relates to the same term, right? The costless accumulated depreciation and so on. Right, super. Okay. Right, make it depreciation 1 million. So once you deduct that one, it will come to 4 million. All right. Super. Right. Super. Right. Okay. So one question was asked whether interest has something to do with this 5 million. No, interest comes with this liability part. There are two aspects. No, one side you have a liability, other side you have an asset. So asset is depreciated, liability you are adding interest and paying the installment. Adding interest, paying installment. Liability එක move වෙන්නේ ළමයි. Liability එකට interest එක add වෙනවා. වාගේ installment එක pay වෙනවා. කොහොම තමයි මේක යන්නේ. Liability එක. Asset එක යන්නේ ළමයි. Asset එක depreciate වෙවි යනවා. ඒක දෙකක්. පැති දෙකක්. හරි. Now one student asked the question, that is why I explained. Okay. Now look here. Now it is so important, right? What if ownership is not being transferred? What if ownership is not being transferred? Now think about the same situation, same thing. Let's say towards the end of the third year, ownership is not being transferred. LB's agreement says, look here, Shihan, right? Once you have paid the third year, I'm not going to give you the ownership. You need to hand me over that vehicle. Right? So I'm going to give you 3.5 million. You can have the right of use asset for 3 years, but towards the end of the third year, I'm not going to give you that ownership. You have to give me back my car. I'll be same. It's a different situation. No? Okay. Now what will happen? Okay. Shihan took the vehicle. He was using it for 3 years. Towards the end of the third year, agreement is over. You are bound by the agreement. Now agreement now you can't do like that, right? So once the 3 years is over, you have to hand it back, that vehicle, to the LB finance. Now I want you all to answer. If Shihan is going to get an economic benefit either by using it for his business purposes, pick me or Uber, whatever the thing, how many years will Shihan generate income? Shihan අවුරුදු කීයද generate වෙන්නේ? Super. You are brilliant. ඔගොල්ලෝ හොඳම කට්ටිය. දැන් 5 years කියලාත් දානවා. Shihan නා 5 years වෙන්න බෑ. It's not 5 years. Right? The income is generated to Shihan only 3 years. 3 years later, Shihan need to hand over that vehicle. ආපහු vehicle එක දෙන්න වෙනවා. That is agreement no. Now my situation එක පොඩ්ඩක් change කරන්නේ term එකක්. ඒකෙන් term එක මම කිව්වා towards the end of the third year, right? Ownership will not be transferred කියලා පොඩ්ඩක් නිකන් වෙනස් කරලා කිව්වා. Now what will happen? Shihan will be able to generate an income for the only for the 3 years only, right? Now then what will happen, lamai? Yes, you are supposed to depreciate. Now you have two periods. One is your lease period. Other one is your useful life. Now in the first scenario, what has happened? Your lease period was 3 years. Your useful life was 5 years. So since Shihan is generating an income over a period of 3 years only, Shihan is going to put that vehicle to Uber or Pick Me or his business or his administration purpose, but still Shihan can generate only 3-year revenue. End of the third year, he need to hand it over. Therefore, you are going to depreciate over a period of 3 years, isn't it? You need to match, no, Lama. You need to match your income and expense So you are going to depreciate over a period of 3 years in my hypothetical example, right? Okay. Now I'm going to change this one. I'm going to change. I hope this part is clear. If the ownership is not being transferred, you are going to compare the lease period with the useful life, because you have to depreciate. That is a matching concept. You need to match your expense with the revenue. So we got to know that lease period is 3 years and the useful life is 5 years. So you are going to generate an income only for a 3-year period. You need to match your expense for that 3-year period. So we did that one, right? Okay. What if it is other way around? What if it is other way around? Let's say your lease period is 5 years. Your economic life is 3 years. Now think about this situation. What is the transaction now? Shihan entered into a lease agreement with LB. LB provided 3.5 million and LB said, look here, Shihan, I'm going to give you the vehicle for a lease period of 5 years. You can pay me the lease rentals for a 5-year period. But towards the end of the 5th year, you need to hand me over that vehicle. Even it may be certain set of scrap. The vehicle but still you have to hand it over. That is the agreement. So ownership is not being transferred. Ownership is not being transferred. However, this particular vehicle had a useful life of only 3 years. Right. I have to be very careful and answer. Right. Now, if Shihan is going to generate an economic benefit, that is, I mean, either an income or a cost saving, right? How long will he be able to generate that economic benefit? 3 years, right? 3 years, super. Economic life is only 3 years. You are going to generate income over a period of 3 years. Then you are going to depreciate, you are going to depreciate the cost over a period of 3 years. Now, what is the common feature? What is the common feature? You are comparing lease period and the useful life. You went on to the lower, isn't it? You went on to the lower in both scenarios. So that we can conclude, So that we can conclude here, right? With that conclude, you have to select the lower item, right? Okay. Now, what is the learning outcome we had now? When it comes to depreciation, you need to look at whether the ownership is being transferred or not. If the ownership is being transferred, then you need to depreciate over the useful life. Why? Because you are going to generate income over that useful life. You need to match your expenses with the revenue. But if the ownership is not being transferred, then you need to compare the lease period and the useful life. Accordingly, you have to select whichever is lower, because that is where you are going to generate an income, right? Okay, right. Please take down this one. Super. Most of the people have already taken down that one. Can we pay the whole amount of lease loan before the due date? Okay, thank you. Done. Super, super. Right. So if ownership is not transferred, is it necessary? No, right. There was a set of questions. Let me explain. Now, if the ownership is not transferred, is there a necessity to pay the down payment? Yes, there can be a necessity. Everything depends on the agreement. So if both parties are agreed, right, ownership is not transferred, but I'm asking for a down payment. If I really want that asset, I can go ahead now. We have signed many housing, the building leases. We have to pay the down payment. So that is part of the lease agreement, but we are not getting the ownership. And then again, one student asked another valid question. If the useful life is given separately and the PP depreciation rate is given separately, what should we take? You have to take the useful life. So very good question. Super. Right? Okay. Right. If anybody wants, you can take a screenshot as well. Screenshot right? So can you explain the depreciation part again? Okay. Right. Right of use is an asset. So you are going to get that benefit from that asset for more than 1 year. So that is going to be a non-current asset. So you have paid out of your pocket 1.5 million and a lease value you have taken of 3.5 million. So you have 5 million worth of asset. You are going to get a benefit over a more than 1 year period. So this is going to be a non-current asset. And we have learned under the matching concept, such non-current asset or such a cost involved in it, you have to allocate, you have to charge it to P&L according to the pattern you are getting the benefits. Thereby you need to assess how you are getting the benefits. If the ownership is being transferred, you are going to definitely use that asset for the entire economic life. No, even after the lease period is over, you are going to continue to use the asset. Therefore, you are going to get the economic benefit over the useful life. So you need to depreciate over the useful life. But if the ownership is not being transferred, right, then what will happen? Towards the end of the lease period, you need to hand over that asset back to the lessor. Then you have to ideally compare the lease period versus the useful life. Whichever is lower is where you are going to generate an economic benefit. So that you have to use to calculate the depreciation. Super. Right. Okay, guys. Now, same thing I have explained in a different way here. Then I have given some things, this and that, and the calculation. Right. Come to this T accounts, Lamai. I want you all to put 6 T accounts. Right. The T accounts, the names are appearing here. Please quickly open up 6 T accounts. Right of use asset, cash, lease liability, lease interest, depreciation, and accumulated depreciation. So let me repeat. Open up quickly 6 T accounts. That is going to be your right of use asset, cash, lease liability, right, and lease interest, depreciation, and accumulated depreciation. Right. Please open up the 6 T accounts. Right. Okay. Right. Super. Right. Okay. One question was asked about the operation lease and finance lease that is not applicable now. Especially from lessee's point of view, that is not applicable. That is something coming from the lessor's point of view, which is not in your syllabus. Operation lease, finance lease කියන එක ඔයාලගේ විෂය නිර්දේශයට අදාළ වෙන්නේ නැහැ accounting වල. ඒක BS වල එනවා ඇති. That may be coming from business studies, but not in accounting, right? We will learn it separately once you are doing the professional courses. Another student is asking about why they are giving discount factors. මම ඒකට වෙනම ගාණක් ළමයි. I don't think I'll have time today, but I'll be doing it. How to calculate the interest and all using the discount factors. ඒක අපි වෙනම කරමු. Right? Okay. I hope you are done with it. I hope you are done with it. Right? The question asks us to provide the transaction into the accounting entries and the statement of financial position and the P&L extract. හරි මේ දෙකක් දාගමු ළමයි. ටක් ගාලා මේ structure එකක් දාගන්න. Right? This is the statement of financial position extract. Right? So you have to put it exactly like this. Extract of statement of financial position in rupees, non-current assets, under that right of use asset, then non-current liabilities, lease liability, current liabilities, lease liability. Right. Okay. If you are using the term, right, lease asset, you are going to lose the marks. You are going to lose marks. Definitely you need to use right of use asset. The term exactly you need to use. Don't use different terms. Vehicle, lease asset, you are going to lose marks. And when it comes to lease liability, don't use the terms like lease loan, lease creditors, you are going to lose marks. The exact word required is lease liability. තේරුණාද අපි තේරුම් ගන්න ඒ concept පාවිච්චි කරාට මේවයි දාන්න බෑ, right? So you have to use the exact terms, lease liability and right of use asset, exact terms. You can't use some other terms, right? Okay, right. Make a okay. Why lease creditor is wrong? Because last time when people use lease creditors, lamai, marks were deducted, and we are not using the term lease creditors in our financials. You can check all the listed company financials. We are using the term lease liability, which is recommended by the standard. Lease creditors is wrong, right? We are not using that term. The recommended term is lease liability. ඔයාලා දැනට lease creditor පාවිච්චි කරනවා නම් don't use it. use the term lease liability because last time marks were deducted. Lease creditors kila daapu kattiyege lakunu kapuwa. Right? It's up to you. Right? You all can decide. Okay? Right. So this is the exact one, lease liability. Right. Super. Then take down the next statement lamai, extract of statement of profit or loss and other comprehensive income. You will have depreciation and lease interest. Right. Good. You'll have plenty of questions, right? Plenty of questions. I'm getting so many questions, right? So one question was, if you have more than one asset, so still you have to use as right to use asset. There can be plenty of lease assets. Everything shall be accumulated and recognized as right of use asset. Okay, right. Can we give me a confirmation? Have you taken up? Yes. Okay, so that we can start doing it. Super. Right. Okay, so the T accounts, let me once again show it. Lease interest, depreciation and accumulated depreciation. Lease interest, depreciation and accumulated depreciation. Right of use asset, cash and lease liability. When you are putting up the T accounts, don't use ruler. Ruler again. Samara T account take gahano ratu pani. Right? No need to do like that. Na? You have to save. Every second is really important in your exam. So get yourself used to, using the pen and put down the T accounts. Really important. All right. Okay. Now we are going to determine the double entries. Now I have a special way of determining the double entries. This may be a little bit different to what you all have studied, but this, I believe, this way is really good. Right? Now, when it comes to double entry, now carefully listen. Na? When you are determining a double entry lamai, I have seen most of the students follow the debit and the credit first. Now my way is different. My way is little different. What I always recommend is don't follow the debit and the credit. Right? That is so not logical. Lama. You are trying to memorize things. No. What I suggest is think about the impact. Lama. Think about the impact. This is something I actually thought of when I developed. We have to think about the impact. Right? From a particular transaction, what are the impacts? So impact to the financial statement elements, asset, liabilities, equity, income and expense, whether they are going to be increased or decreased. Financial statement impact, right? Impact, financial statement elements impact. Okay, right, super. Now think about the first one, down payment. Down payment. I know most of guys, when they see down payment, they go and put the double entry. No, not like that. Think about the impact. Okay, down payment. What is happening? So Shihan is going to pay 1.5 million out of his pocket. Shihan is going to pay 1.5 million out of his pocket. So the cash asset is going to come down. Cash asset is going to come down. Cash come down. And on the other side, what are they receiving? Okay, why did Shihan paid 1.5 million out of his pocket? In order to get the right of use asset. So the right of use asset goes up. Right of use asset goes up. Now this is my thinking process. Okay, down payment, cash goes down, my right of use asset goes up. Now then I can determine the double entry, right? Okay, cash goes down, cash credited. Right of use asset goes up, right of use asset debited. I have seen, I don't know why people are using this so illogical method. Just go ahead with always start with the debit, always ends up with credit. No, it should not be like that. Because truly speaking, when you're going to the practical life of it, you are not going to use debit and the credit. It is going to be plus and minus. Mark my words, mark my words. When you are really in the real world, practically, you are not going to use debit and credit. It is going to be plus and minus, right? Okay, now think about it, okay? Because of down payment, cash goes down, cash credit, right of use asset goes up, right of use asset debit, right? And when you are passing a double entry even Lamai in a T account, you have to first pass the amount. You have to first put the amount. Then only you are going to change the names, right? So credited to cash 1.5, debited to right of use asset 1.5. Then you are going to change the names. That is so wrong, right? Now you can change the name. This is going to be the right of use asset, right? And this is going to be your cash. Super, right? Okay, please do it with me, right? I'm always recommending you to be there in the live classes and do it along with me. I know some of you guys are fond of recorded videos, but really speaking, talk to yourself, be frank to yourself. Are you really using it? Right? So most of the time you are not watching the videos, you are just skipping, and towards the end, closer to the exam only, suddenly you start to peek out and try to do things. So be active in the live classes and be engaged and interact. That's the most important thing. And you all are pretty good, right? You all are really a super brilliant set of students with pretty much higher capacity as well. Super. This is the first entry, yeah? Right. Now think about the second entry. Think about the second entry. Right. Now, Shihan is obtaining a lease facility. Shihan is obtaining a lease facility of 3.5 million. Shihan is obtaining a lease facility of 3.5 million. Think about it. Okay. One side, Shihan is getting a commitment, right? Lease liability. So lease liability goes up. Okay, lease liability goes up. Why Shihan obtained that lease facility? In order to get that right of use asset. In order to get that right of use asset. Now, as a result, lease liability goes up, right of use asset goes up. So lease liability goes up means liability credit. Right of use asset increase, right of use asset debit. It's simple as that. So lease liability credited, right of use asset debited, 3.5 million, right? So lease liability credited 3.5 million, right? And your right of use asset debited 3.5 million. So I'm going to put that one here. Right of use asset, and this is going to be my lease liability. Right, super. Okay, right. Okay, now think about those entries. Cash goes down, right of use asset goes up. Cash credit, right of use asset debit. Lease liability goes up, lease liability credit, and right of use asset goes up. Right of use asset debit. Super. Right. Okay. Then what happened? Right. Then 1 year passed. Then 1 year passed. What has happened? During that 1 year, interest was accumulated. With the passage of the time, you need to recognize the interest. The interest value is 350,000. Now think about it. Okay, interest. Interest is an expense, right? Interest is an expense. Shihan had to incur that interest expense. So interest expense goes up. Interest is an expense, expense goes up. And on the other side, right, it is something payable. Ne? It is something payable. Shihan had to pay it. So you are going to add that to the loan value. Add that to the lease liability. So lease liability goes up. Interest is an expense, expense goes up. Expense debit. Lease liability, you are accruing it. You are adding it. So lease liability goes up. Lease liability credited. Interest expense, interest is going to debit, and lease liability is going to credit. Right? Simple as that. Okay, we are going to pass the entry. Lease interest debited 350,000. Lease interest debited 350,000. Okay, and credited to the lease liability 350,000. So I'm going to put the terms here. Lease interest here. Lease interest here, right? And here I'm going to put lease liability. Lease liability, right? Okay, super, right? Okay, what else happened during that year? So you have incurred a lease interest. What else it happened? The right of use asset was 5 million, and you can't keep it as it is. You are using it, you are generating income. So you need to depreciate. So we calculated the depreciation to be 1 million. So you need to recognize that depreciation expense. Think about it. So depreciation is an expense, expense goes up, and you need to make a provision. So depreciation provision or the accumulated depreciation goes up. Debited to depreciation, credited to accumulated depreciation. Debited to depreciation 1 million, credited to accumulated depreciation 1 million, right? So we are going to change the names to be super, right? Debited to depreciation, credited to accumulated depreciation 1 million each. 1 million each. We started with the down payment, we added the lease liability, we accrued the interest, and we recognize the depreciation expense, right? The same all things we have discussed in our particular statement. Super, right? Okay, guys. Now, one final transaction towards the end of the lease period. Towards the end of the lease period, right? Shihan paid 1.4 million the lease installment. Shihan paid 1.4 million the lease installment. Now think about what will happen. Shihan had to pay out of his pocket now. So cash comes down. Cash comes down. And what are you paying? Out of this 1.5 million, 1.4 million, you are paying the loan and the accrued interest. You are paying that loan and the accrued interest. So that loan and the accrued interest, the lease liability should come down. So one side cash should come down and the lease liability should come down. So think about the double entry. You are paying the lease installment. Cash comes down, cash credited. Lease liability comes down, lease liability debited. Cash credited, lease liability debited. Right? So lease liability debited 1.4 million and cash credited 1.4 million. So we'll put that as lease liability. Right, I'm going to put this as cash. Right. Okay, these are the entries. Now think about the double entry. It's quite easy, no? Down payment, what is the entry? The math taggal entries ටික හිතන්න ළමයි. මේකත් දාගන්න. What are the entries? Down payment. Right, now it's quite easy. Okay, cash comes down. Credited to cash, debited to right of use asset. Credited to cash, debited to right of use asset. Lease liability, credited to lease liability, debited to right of use asset. Credited to lease liability, debited to right of use asset. Lease interest, right? Debited to lease interest, credited to lease liability. Depreciation, debited to depreciation, credited to accumulated depreciation. Lease payment, debited to lease liability, credited to cash. It's quite easy now. Now you have to, inject that to your blood, lama. It's so easy now. Down payment, debited to right of use asset, credited to cash. Lease liability, debited to right of use asset, credited to lease liability. Right? Interest, debited to lease interest expense, credited to lease liability. Depreciation, debited to depreciation, credited to accumulated depreciation. Lease payment, debited to lease liability, credited to cash. Right? So it should come from that thinking process. Once you develop that thinking part, it will automatically, you are going to remember it. You are never going to forget about it. Right? Super. Now I'm going to close down my T accounts and to arrive at the final balances. I'm going to close down the T accounts. Please do it with me. So your closing balance is going to be 5 million here. And this is going to become my opening balance. 5 million. Cash account, we will keep it. No need to balance it because there can be many other transactions. There can be an opening balance which was not given to us. We are going to just keep it. Lease liability. Your closing balance 3,850,000 minus 1.4 million is going to be 2,450,000. 2,450,000, right? And lease interest, you are going to charge it to PNL. You are going to transfer it to PNL. Expense accounts, you have to charge it to PNL, no? Right? Expense accounts, income accounts, you are going to charge it to PNL. So depreciation, you are going to charge it to PNL. Accumulated depreciation will be carried forward. Accumulated depreciation will be carried forward. So your closing balance is 1 million. And your opening balance is going to be 1 million. Right. Super. Right. Okay. Okay. Right. Your paper markers are very specific with these terms. A term එක හරියටම දාන්න. Even we argued that that the student deserve if they have written lease creditors, but examiners were so they are so specific, so they need that exact term. Now that is not there in professional exams. In CAO or any other exams, we are not that strict on that, but in advanced level, that is a total different story. So students are asking, why can't we use different other terms? Stick to these terms. Right? And secondly, can we, another student is asking, can we put the interest into a different account? When it comes to lease accounting, you need to accumulate that to the lease liability itself. Right? Interest payable, but when it comes to lease accounting, there's a specific accounting treatment recommended by the standard. So you have to follow it. Standard is a law, right? As per 1995, number 15, Accounting and Auditing Standards Act, right? So accounting standards in Sri Lanka is a law, so you have to bound by it. You are bound by it. You all know that whatever the accounting standard that is being passed in Sri Lanka, that needs to be approved in the parliament, and it is been gazetted. All the accounting standards are being approved in parliament, right? You are putting that accounting standard into a parliament and you get the majority vote, then you gazette it. That's a law, so you have to bound by it. Parliament accounting standard amended. You all know the reason, right? Okay, right. Okay, guys, I hope you all have done with this part. Okay, Lamai, now look here, right? I'm going to teach you a very important part, right? Look here, Lamai, right? Now, this particular lease liability, we have a balance of 2,450,000. No, we have a balance of 2,450,000. Now, you need to remember an important accounting standard, LKAS 1. LKAS 1 accounting standard is relevant to the presentation of financial statements. That standard is applicable for you all as well, right? Presentation of financial statements. Now, as per that accounting standard, if an asset is going to realize or a liability is going to settle, if a liability is going to settle, asset is going to realize within the next 12 months, you have to show that figure as a current item. For an example, you have inventory. You are going to sell that inventory in the next year. So you have to show that inventory as a current asset. You have a debtor is going to settle during the next year. So you have to show that as a current asset. But you have a property, plant and equipment, let's say a building which has a useful life of 25 years. So you are going to recover, you are going to realize the value of that asset over a period of 25 years. So you are going to put that under the non-current asset. Think about the liabilities. Let's say you have obtained a bank overdraft. You are going to settle that within the next few months. So you have to put that under the current liability. You have taken up a trade creditor who has given you a 1 month credit period. So after 1 month credit period, you have to pay. So you are going to put that as a current liability. Think about you have obtained a bank loan. For an example, let's say you have obtained a bank loan of 1,000 rupees. And in the next year, you have to pay 200, right? And remaining amount is 800. This is a bank loan. Next year, you have to pay. This is the amount you are going to pay in the next year. This is the remaining amount. Then as per LKS 1, what you have to do? This 200 you have to pay, show it as a current liability. This 800 as a non-current liability, right? Okay. So when it comes to liabilities, if a liability is going to recover, is liability is going to settle during the next 12 months period, you have to show that as a current liability. Remaining amount, you can show it as a non-current liability. Now, look here, right? I will take you through to this, my statement here. Okay, right? Okay. Now, towards the end of the first year, we had a lease liability. We had a lease liability of 2,450,000. 2,450,000. Out of this 2,450,000, what will happen in the next year? Next year, you are going to repay 1,155,000. How come? For this 2,450,000, in the second year, you are going to accumulate interest of 245,000. So this balance is going to become 2,695,000. And when you are paying 1,400,000 the installment, you are going to repay the second year interest plus loan repayment. Second year you are going to repay the loan. Out of this 2,450,000, you are going to repay 1,155,000 in the second year. You are going to repay 1,155,000 in the second year, and the remaining balance 1,295,000 will be paid in the third year. 1,295,000 will be paid in the third year. Look at the total here. 1,155, 1,295. How much is the total? 50,000. My bad. It should be 50. It's 5 no. All right. 2,450,000. 2,450,000 will be paid next year. 1,155,000. Third year 1,295,000. Okay. As per case 1, presentation of financial statements, if you have a liability that you are going to settle part of it in the next year, next 12 months, you have to show that balance as a current liability, and the remaining balance will be shown as a non-current liability. Okay, so this is coming from LKS 1. So if you have a liability, the amount you are going to pay in the next year of that liability, you have to show it as a current liability, and the remaining amount you are going to show it as a non-current liability. In a question, if you have this remaining loan value to be 2,450,000, how can you arrive at the next year loan repayment? Next year loan repayment. It's quite easy. What you have to do is, from the next year installment, you need to deduct the next year interest of 1.4 million. When you deduct 245,000, you will arrive at the second year loan repayment to be 1,155,000. So, right, in a question, that is why we need to work out this question for another year advance, right? So that once you arrive at the closing lease liability value, you need to calculate the current liability. How to do that? From the next installment, you need to deduct the next year interest. That value, 1,155,000, is going to become your current liability. And the remaining amount of this 2,450,000, when you deduct 1,155,000, you will arrive at the remaining figure. That remaining figure is going to be your non-current liability. The remaining figure is going to be your non-current liability. Okay, right. So let me put that one into my question here as well. Right. Sorry. Here. Right. So as per LKS 1, we need to separate the current liability and the non-current liability. How to get the current liability? From the next installment. From the next installment, you need to deduct interest in next installment. So in my case, that is going to be 1,400,000 minus 245,000. So the answer is going to be 1,155,000. 1,155,000. How to get the current liability? From the next installment, deduct the interest included in it. Then how to get the non-current liability? From the total liability, deduct the current liability. So that is, from 2,450,000, you are going to deduct 1,155,000. So the answer is going to be 1,295,000. 1,295,000. Right? 1,295,000. Please take down this one. Okay, right. So let me explain it again. Lamai, you have to remove the interest because that is relevant to the next year. Then we are loan එක අද ගත්තම loan එකට ඔයා commit වෙලා ඉවරයි. හැබැයි interest එක එන්නේ time එක pass වෙනකොට. Next year interest එක දාලා next year එකට. That is not relevant to the current year. But loan is being taken. So that is something you have already committed. But interest is coming with the passage of the time. So let me explain it once again. Carefully listen. Right? As per LKAS 1, liabilities or assets, right, which are going to realize in the next year, next 12 months, you have to show it as a current asset or a current liability. Thereby, now this lease liability, finally we arrived at 2,450,000. Now that include amount to be repaid in the next year and amount to be repaid in the third year. This 2,450,000 is at the end of the first year. No, this does not have any interest. The first year interest is being paid. So this has only the loan value. Now this loan value, we have to divide how much to be paid in the next year. That goes to current. How much to be paid in the year after, that goes to non-current. Then how to get the current and the non-current? Right? Now in the next year, what will happen? You start with 2 million. Let me show it in a different color. You started with 2,450,000. Next year you accumulated interest of 245. This became 2,695,000. This is the interest in the next year. Then when you pay the installment, your second installment 1,400, you are going to repay this interest. So the second year interest 2,245,000 will be repaid. And additionally, of this 1.4 million, you are going to pay the next year interest that is relevant to the next year. In addition, you are going to repay the loan balance. You are going to repay the loan balance. So that residual amount 1.4 million minus 245,000, 1,155,000 is a loan repayment. That means of this 2,450,000, 1,155,000 is going to be paid in the next year. So that is going to be my current liability. That is going to be my current liability. Don't take the next year interest. That is relevant to the next year. අපි මේ පළවෙනි අවුරුද්දේ අන්තිමට තියෙන liability එක තමයි දැන් මේ current non-current කඩන්න හදන්නේ. What we are going to do is towards the end of the first year, the remaining lease liability, we are going to separate that in the current and non-current. Right? So the next year interest you can't take, but the lease liability is something already committed. So the amount you are going to repay in the next year is going to become a current liability. The remaining amount, you have a total liability of 2,450,000 and the current portion is 1,155,000. So the remaining amount 1,295,000 is going to become your non-current liability. Right? Okay, so I explained twice. I hope that clarifies. Super. Right? Okay. Right. Okay. Right. Now, okay, shall we put the figures into our statement of financial position then? Right? We'll do it together. Right. So the right of use asset, we had a cost of 5 million. Right? So you will know that from the cost we need to deduct the accumulated depreciation. From the cost you have to deduct the accumulated depreciation, which is 1 million. So my net book value is going to be 4 million. My net book value is going to be 4 million. My net book value is going to be 4 million. Okay? Right. Super. Please, you have to do it with me. Right. Then lease liability. Right. When it comes to lease liability, keep this in mind. First of all, we need to deal with the current. When we are dealing with the lease liability, now we have to put 2,450,000 into current and non-current. No, don't go to non-current. First of all, you have to deal with the current, right? So how to get the current value? How to get the current value? From the next year installment, you need to deduct the next year interest, right? Okay. So the lease liability, you are going to take the next year installment. Next year installment. From that, you are going to deduct interest in next year installment. Next year installment. Interest in next year installment. Interest in next year installment. So the next year installment is 1,400,000, right? Interest in the next year installment is 245,000, right? So once you deduct this one, it is going to be 1,155,000, right? 1,155,000, 1,155,000. Right. One student raised the question asking whether the lease installment can be varied. There's a particular item called my variable installments, but that may not be tested from y'all. Right. Wala level එක fixed installment. A variable component එක තියෙනවා, but that is not applicable for you all. Right. Okay. Right. So we are done with the current portion. So how about the non-current portion? So non-current portion is simply, that is the difference between the total liability and the current portion. So that is why I told you, first of all, we have to deal with the current. So the non-current portion is going to be your total liability minus current liability. Your total liability minus current liability, right? So the total liability is 2,450,000 and the current liability is 1,155,000. So the answer is going to be 1,295,000. 1,295,000, right? Okay, please take down 1,295,000. Right. Okay. Okay. Oh, sorry. This should be 1,300. Ne? Sorry, there's a small error here. Once you deduct, this should be 1,300. Sorry, my bad. Is it right? No. Sorry. Amounts are correct, right? I don't think there's an error. Right. Amounts are correct. No error, right? Yeah. Okay. Fine. Super. Right. We'll move on to the next part. Depreciation and the lease interest. Depreciation is 1 million and lease interest is 350,000. Now don't put the second year interest. We are still in the first year. No? Second year interest will come to the second year current year interest. And when you are taking a P&L extract, something that you might not be familiar. When you are putting an expense, put that within brackets. When you are putting an expense, put that within brackets, especially when it comes to an extract. So most of the students do this error, do this mistake. Put them in brackets, right? Okay, so we are done with our first question. Right? So I hope this part is clear for you, right? So we did our first question. As you can remember, we started with Shihan and LB, and finally during this nearly 2 hours period, we came into a conclusion with all the theory discussions. But simply what I have to explain you is this discounting factors and those other things, right? Rather than moving on to those things, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do the past papers with you, right? Now you will see how easy it is, right? When we are doing the past paper, that is going to be really easy, right? Okay, at what time class is over? The class is scheduled up to 9:30, right? 9:30. Okay. No, one student is asking paid installment. Can we put that in the P&L? No, it was only the interest expense, right? Depreciation and lease interest. You can't put that as installment, right? So let me move on to the past paper questions. You will see how easy it is, right? Let me move on to the past paper questions, which is okay, right? Okay, now with our understanding, Lamai, with our understanding in this question, right? Now we are going to deal with the past papers. Now we will see how these questions are being tested and how we are supposed to tackle the question. Now you will see that we don't need lengthy arguments and lengthy discussions now. We are going to use the simplest shortcut methods to arrive at our final answers. Now we had our understanding, 2 hours we learned. Now we are going to apply that to a question, right? Okay, we'll see, we'll read the question. This is 2020, your recent exam paper, right? In the company account, they gave an adjustment. We'll see how can we do that one. The company entered into a lease agreement on 1st of March 2003 to obtain the right of use of a building for a period of 4 years. මේක ඔයාලගේ ටියුට් එකේ තියෙනවා, right? Downloads වලින් ඔයාලට ගන්න පුළුවන් අරන් ඇති. Right. However, this building was available for use from 31st of March 2020. Right. This is really important. Right. I hope you all have already studied LK16. I hope you all have already studied LK16 Lamai. As per LK16, right? When are you supposed to start depreciating? You have to start depreciating the asset when the asset is available for use, not at the point you are using the asset. No. You have to start depreciating the asset once the asset is available for use. Now, for an example, you purchase the building on 1st of March. You purchase the building on 1st of March, but the building was available for use on 31st of March. So entire 1 month you were doing some other renovations or whatever to make sure that building is available for use. Therefore, you can't depreciate for that 1 month. Depreciation starts once the asset is available for use, not at the point of purchase, right? Purchase karna point anyway. There are some assets which are available for use at the point of purchase. Think about you purchasing a laptop. At the point of purchase, it's available for use. But think about a lift, Lamai. No, at the point of purchase, you can't use it. You have to get the lift, you have to install it, and you have to make sure it's working properly. Then only it will be available for use, right? Therefore, you have to start depreciating from the date the asset is available for use. On the mama PP patta touch kara podda, right? After spending rupees 500,000 for renovation, right? So after spending rupees 500,000 for renovation only, this was available for use. Super. This renovation is expected to generate benefits to the company. So that is going to generate benefits. So when an expense is going to generate benefits, that is a capital nature expense, no? Right? You all have learned. This is also coming under the PP discussion. Expenses we can classify into 2, revenue nature and the capital nature. If an expense is going to increase the quality of the asset, if an expense is going to increase the capacity of the asset, if an expense is going to increase the useful life of an asset, if the expense is going to reduce your day-to-day operational expenses, we consider that expense as a capital nature expense. You are going to capitalize it. But if an expense is not going to do so, we consider it to be a revenue nature expense. You are going to charge it to P&L. Now the question is very clear that it is going to generate benefits. If that expense is going to generate benefits, this renovation, this is going to become a capital nature expense where you are going to add that to the building. Due to this renovation, the building is generating more benefits. So you have to capitalize it. Clear? Right? Okay. To the company over the entire lease period. However, this amount has been accounted in the other administration expenses. Now that is wrong, no? That is wrong. When you are charging it to the administration expenses, that is revenue nature. If it is capital nature, you have to add that to the building. Capitalizing means you are adding that expense to the building, no? Adding that expense to the asset itself. Clear? Right. Lease interest is not charged during the renovation period. The company is not charging lease interest over the renovation period. During that 1 month, as per the agreement, they are not charging. Okay, they are not charging the lease interest. Okay, right. We'll continue. According to the agreement, an annual lease rental of 4,413,000. 4,413,000 is payable from 31st of March 2021. 31st of March 2021. right? That is coming, you are going to repay the loan installment from the next year onwards. We are in 31st of March 2020 now. The lease interest applicable for the year ending 31st of March 2021 is 1,890,000. Is 1,890,000. The lease liability in the books and the administrative expenses. The lease liability in the books is 12,600,000. Admin expenses is rupees 6,462,000 respectively. Show the financial statement extracts for the year ended 31st of March 2020. It should be 2020, right? 2020. Okay. Right. So I'm going to work out the question. We are going to do it together. So, right, we are going to do it together. Okay. Now, based on the information given here, I'll put it in a separate statement, Lamai. Right. If you look at the statement of financial position, right? So you have the under the non-current assets. We'll put that one. Right. Under the non-current assets, right? You have the right of use asset. You have the right of use asset. Right. Then under the non-current liabilities, you have the lease liability. Please take it down with me. Then under the current liabilities, you have the lease liability. Have the lease liability, right? Then I'll put the P&L in a different color. Under P&L, right? We have these admin expenses, right? Okay, those are the items. And the question, we don't have depreciation or lease interest, right? They are not charging it. They are not charging lease interest or the depreciation. Why? Depreciation is not applicable because the asset was not available for use. And question is pretty clear. During the renovation period, they are not charging any interest. Okay, these are the extracts that we are going to fulfill, right? Okay, so I'm going to use a different color to do the workings now, right? So this is exactly what we are going to do, right? Make it in a working stick work out karanna, so that I can straight away put the answers as well, right? Okay, right. Right. Now look here. They have given us certain bit of information. Now what they are saying is, right, so you have a lease liability, right, of rupees 12,600,000. They are saying you have a lease liability of 12,600,000. You have a lease liability of 12,600,000, right? And they are saying, right, your next installment is going to be 4,413,000, and of that the interest included in it is 1,890,000. Of that, even the interest included in it is 1,890,000. 1,890,000. Okay, 1,890,000, right? Okay, then if the interest is 1,890,000, how much is the lease repayment? How much is the lease repayment? That you can easily calculate, no? That is 4,413,000 minus 1,890,000, right? So you can calculate 4,413,000 minus 1,890 is going to be 2,523,000. 2,523,000. Okay, 2,523,000. Right? What else they have said? they have done a renovation. They have done a renovation of rupees 500,000. And this is a capital expenditure. This is a capital expenditure. This is a capital expenditure, right? Okay, right? Right. Now I'll take a different color and show how I'm going to work out. Right? What I did was, Lamai, I put down the extracts. Right? Then I took the information given in the question. Now you will see it's really easy, right? It's really easy, right? Now what will happen? What will happen when there's a lease liability, Lamai? Right? Think about our example. Initial recognition of a lease liability, what will happen? Right? One side lease liability goes up, other side you are receiving a right of use asset. Lease liability goes up, right of use asset is also receiving, right? No need to put the double entries, but I'll put debited to right of use asset, credited to lease liability. Entry right? But I'm giving you for you to understand. It's quite easy. You have to just put them as plus and minus. Making plus minus with the adjustment, right? So what will happen now? You are going to recognize the lease right of use asset. You are going to recognize here plus 12,600,000, right? And mama right of use asset take a recognize kara. Right of use asset done, right? So when you are recognizing the lease liability, one side lease liability goes up, other side right of use asset goes up. So I recognize the right of use asset. That part is clear. Now the thing is, I need to put that to the lease liability. Now, can you remember? When you are putting that to the lease liability, you need to separate that to the current and the non-current, right? You have to separate that to the current and the non-current. So lease liability, this figure, you have to separate that to the current and the non-current. Current and the non-current. How much is the current balance? We have already calculated, right? From the next installment, deduct the next year interest. We have already calculated. The current portion is going to be 2,523,000. 2,523,000. Then how much is the non-current portion? How to calculate the non-current portion? From the total liability, you have to deduct the current liability. Right? So it's so easy, right? 12,600,000 minus 2,523,000. 2,523,000. Right? 2,523,000. So how much is the non-current portion? 10,077,000. So now you can easily put, right? So the current portion is going to be, I can straight away put 2,523,000. Non-current portion 10,077,000. So this part done. So I have put the current and the non-current portions as well. Right? So it's a simple double entry, right? Debited to your right of use asset and credited to, on the other side, the lease liability, and you have to separate the current and the non-current. So how to separate the current? From the next installment, deduct the next year interest. How to get the non-current? From the total liability, deduct the current liability. Now you all know, right? Right, that part is done. What about the renovation expense? Now this has been charged to P&L as an admin expense. Now that is wrong, no? You can charge it to the P&L, no? I'll take it here, right? So you have to recognize, you have to add that to the asset, the building itself. Therefore, you are going to debit that to right of use asset. You are going to recognize that as part of the asset, and you are going to give a credit to the admin expense. Right? So we'll pass that entry, right? So debited to 500, right of use asset here 500,000, and you are going to give a credit to the admin expense. So the balance was 6,462,000. minus 500,000. So the figure is going to be 5,962,000 expense. Now I can finally arrive at the right of use asset as well. It's going to be 13,100,000. 13,100,000. Right? Okay. Right? So it didn't took actually even 5 minutes, right? Even 5 minutes, right? So what we did was Lamai, this is a company account sum now. When it comes to a company account sum Lamai, this part you are already drafting. Statement of financial position, P&L you are already drafting, right? So really speaking, what you need to do is this part, the workings. So what I did was I took the information in the question. Then I decided what I exactly need to do. So lease liability 12,600. So we have to put, okay, that is part of my right of use asset, and the liability I have to separate the current and the non-current. That's it. Then what else we have to do? The renovation expense that has been charged to P&L, remove it from the P&L and add that to the asset. Only 2 entries. Entries dekai metana, right? So easy, so easy. This question is also so easy because you are not being charged with lease interest or depreciation. So it's quite easy, right? Okay. Make a dagan lamai. Right? This is 2020, your last exam paper. Right. So one question was, do we students are asking the questions, right? Okay. Will you provide the recording of the session, right? What I intend from you all is to stay in the live classes. Actually, based on your response only, we will decide whether to continue the sessions or not, right? Please stay in the live classes. That gives the lecturer a momentum to continue, right? We'll consider how to get the recordings later on. Right. Now, one question, one student raised the question regarding the renovation payment, whether it is paid or payable. So that doesn't matter for us. That is coming from the trial balance. If it is payable, that will be shown as a current liability where we have to put it them separately. For this leasing part, that may not be a matter for us, but really speaking, yes, when you're doing the company account, you will come across that situation as well, right? So considering the timing constraint, so can you explain the admin expense again? Right, okay. Once again, listen. Already they have recognized an admin expense of 6,462,000. True. And that includes the renovation 500,000. So question is very clear that renovation is going to generate additional benefits. So that indicate that it's a capital nature expense. So capital nature expenses are the expenses that are going to increase the quality of the asset, that are going to increase the capacity of the asset, that are going to increase the useful life of the asset, or to reduce your day-to-day operational expenses. If such an asset, such an expense is there, rather than charging it to P&L, you have to capitalize it. You have to add that to the asset itself. Now, this renovation 500,000 is a capital nature expense, but they have included in the admin. So you have to remove it from there. When admin expenses removal is a credit, admin expense is a debit. For you to remove it, you have to credit. So credited to admin expense and debited to, you have to add that to the asset. So that is what we did. Okay. I believe that you all are okay with it. Right. Husni is asking, why don't we calculate the lease interest and the depreciation? This question is pretty clear, Lamai, because you obtained the lease facility on 1st of March and we are preparing the financials for 31st of March. Asset was available for use on 31st of March 2020 and they are not charging lease interest for 31st of March 2020. We are preparing the financials for 31st of March 2020. So we don't have to account for it. But if the question is about 31st of March 2021, yes, we have to account for the depreciation and the lease interest, right? Okay, we'll move on to another question, Lamai, 2019 question. 2019, your past paper. We'll see, right? Okay, read the question. The company entered into a lease agreement on 1st of April 2018 to purchase a motor vehicle under a finance lease. Okay, 1st of April 2018, motor vehicle under a finance lease. This is actually before the new standard. That is why they are using the term finance lease. It's no longer applicable now. The lease term is 5 years. Sorry, lease term is 5 years. Lease term is 5 years. As at 1st of April 2018, the fair value. Right? What is the meaning of a fair value? Fair value is the value you are receiving for a sale of an asset or a settlement of a liability from a what we call a reasonable transaction, from a transaction with the what we call on a we can make it an ordinary transaction on the measurement date, right? So it's a fair value is the market value, the value you are receiving for an asset or a liability settlement on from an ordinary transaction on the measurement date. It should be a fair transaction, right? It's a market value. Fair value means the market value. In our case, can you remember that our vehicle, Shihan's vehicle, had a value of 5 million? That is a fair value, right? The market value of the motor vehicle, and its useful life was estimated to be 5,960,000 and 5 years, respectively. According to the lease agreement, 2.5 million was paid as the down payment. 2.5 million was paid as a down payment on 1st of April 2018, and the first annual installment of rupees 1,250,000 was paid on 31st of March 2019. Okay, so 1st of April you have obtained fair value is 5,960,000, useful life 5 years, lease period 5 years, down payment 2.5, lease installment 1,250,000. The lease interest for the years ending 31st of March 2019 and 31st of March 2020 is 346,000 and 256,000 respectively. Only the down payment and first lease installment paid by the company have been recorded in the lease payments account, right? What they have done is they have recognized the down payment and the lease installment under the lease payment account. No other entry has been made in this respect, right? Okay, right? Now this is 2019 August question paper, right? Year before last year, right? What they have done so far, right? What they have done so far, right? So we have to show the financial extracts. I'll put the financial extract first, right? I'll put the financial extracts. Statement of financial position under the non-current assets. We have the right of use asset. Then under the, we have the non-current liabilities. Under that we have the lease liability. Then we have the current liabilities. Under that we have the lease liability, right? Then we got the P&L. We have the P&L. And this P&L, we are going to have the depreciation, and we are going to have the lease interest. Depreciation and the lease interest, right? Okay, put down your statement, Lamai, right? Right? Once you are done with it, give me an okay, right? Right, sure. Okay, so one student is asking to explain the fair value in simple terms. Remember that as the market value. That is the value you are getting for a sale of an asset or a settlement of a liability from an ordinary transaction on the measurement date. That is the definition. But don't need to remember, make it simple. Fair value is the market value, right? Okay. Okay. So you are done with this one. I'm going to put down my workings. I'm going to do it in the same paper, Lamai, because then it will be really easy for you to can understand, right? Okay. Now, so far what they have done is, Lamai, right? So they have a down payment, right? We have a down payment of 2,500,000, right? And the lease installment paid, they have paid a lease installment 1,250,000, right? 1,250,000. Now what they have done so far, right? What they have done so far is the total of these two, 2,500,000, and these two is 3,750,000. It's 3,750,000. What they have done is, they have debited to lease payment. They have debited to lease payment and credited to cash account. This is what they have done so far. This is what they have done so far. Right? That is the only transaction they have done. That is the only transaction they have done. Credited to cash, debited to a value called lease payment. That is what they have done. This is what they have done. Right? So I'm going to put some workings. We'll see what we are going to do now, right? We'll see what we are going to do now, right? So we are going to apply our knowledge on leasing and we are going to work out this question, right? We are going to work out this question, right? Okay, now in this particular vehicle, it has a market value of 5,960,000. So let me do the question in 1,000 for the easiness. It will be really difficult, right? The vehicle, the market value is, right? The market value is 5,960,000. 5,960,000. How this was paid, Lamai? 5,960,000 was paid. So you had a down payment. You have made a down payment of rupees 2,500,000. And for the balance, you have obtained a lease facility. You have obtained a lease facility, 5,960,000 minus 2,500, 3,460,000. Can you remember Shihan and LB? Shihan paid 1,500, obtained a lease facility 3,500, total became 5 million. Similar to that one. This particular motor vehicle has 5,960 worth of a value, and you have paid 2.5 million and lease value of 3,460,000, right? Okay. Now, look here, Lamai, right? We are going to deal with these things separately, right? Now, where is this down payment now? Down payment, they have already credited the cash. They have debited to lease payment. Now, we can't keep it in the lease payment now. We have to remove it from the lease payment and we are going to add that to the right of use asset. Can you remember the double entry for the down payment? Credited to cash. You are paying it. So credited to cash and debited to right of use asset. Now they have already credited to cash. I can't be crediting it to cash, but they have put that into a wrong account, lease payment account. So I have to remove it from the lease payment account and I need to add that to the right of use asset. So the double entry I am going to pass, debited to right of use asset, credited to lease payment. Lease payment ke liye buru account hai, pacha account hai. That is there in the trial balance that has no value, right? So I'm going to remove it from the trial balance and you're going to add that to the right of use asset, 2,500. Right? I'm determining the double entry and I'm passing it. And I'm going to remove this lease payment from the trial balance. Trial balance again lease payment again kapala dano 2,500. Still there's 1,250. මේ තියෙන 3,750 ළමයි මම 2,500ක් කපලා දැම්මද හරිද done. That is what they have done. හරිද? Are we clear? Right. Okay. Right. Up to this point, are you all okay with it? Yes. මෙතන වෙනකල් okay නේ? Yes. ළමයි. Now, some students are asking that to work out this question in T accounts. Don't do that one. Why are we using the T accounts? We have to use the T accounts to understand the concept. Now, thereafter, don't use the T accounts, lamai. That is waste of your time. එකට T accounts දාන්න එපා. Then you have to apply the conceptual knowledge. ඒක තමයි දැන් මෙතන කරන්නේ අපි. මේකට T accounts ගගා මම කරන්න ගියොත් එimela මේ සෑහෙන වෙලාවක් යනවා. Don't do that one. හරි? Right. Lease. So fine 5,960 down payment, we are done with it. The lease value is 3,460. Lease value is 3,460. Now for this particular lease value, you have to accumulate the lease interest, no? So the first year interest. How much is the first year interest? How much is the first year interest here? 346,000, right? Making 346,000. 346,000 is the interest. Then what will happen to the interest double entry? Think about the double entry of the interest. Interest is an expense. Expense goes up and my liability goes up. It should be added to the liability, right? Okay. So the double entry will be debited to interest, right? Credited to lease liability. Credited to lease liability. Credited to lease liability, right? Okay, wait here, I make a continue karanna lamai, then I'll show how to pass the entry, right? Okay, now it became 3,806,000. Same thing what we did in that question. Then what will happen? You are going to pay the first year installment. Your first year installment. You are going to pay your first year installment. How much is the first year installment? 1,250. 1,250. That is your first year installment, right? So your first year interest is 346. You debited to the interest account and you credited to the lease liability. And then the first year installment 1,250. That you are going to pay the loan value as well as the loan repayment as well. So then what is the double entry for this one? Make a double entry මතකයිනේ. මේ ඇත්තටම හදනකොට double entry දදායින්න ඕනේ නැහැ. But since for your knowledge purpose I'm giving, right? So what is the double entry for this 1,250? When you are paying credited to cash and debited to the lease liability, but they have already credited cash. They have put that under the lease payment. So I'm going to remove it from here. Lease payment again time I'm make ayin karan, right? So debited to, right? Okay, so this one is debited to lease liability. Debited to lease liability. Credited to lease payment. Ara lease payment කියන එකට මම මේක අයින් කරලම දානවා. දැන් මොන මේකෙන් මේ 1250ක් මම කපලම දානවා. අයින් කරලම දැම්මා. Right? Okay. Right? Now once we have done this one, what is the remaining balance? 3463806 minus 1,250. Now this will become 2,556,000. 2,556,000. Okay, now look here. This is your lease liability account, lamai. This is your lease liability account. You started with 3,460, then you accumulated interest, then you paid the installment. Final lease liability value became 2,556,000. 2,556,000. Okay, 2,556,000. Now this figure you have to separate current and non-current. You have to separate current and non-current. Final leasing liability, you need to separate the current and the non-current. How to divide the current and the non-current? Current portion is the next year installment minus the interest included in it. Kiyada 256. Next year interest included in it is 256. 1,250 minus 256 is going to be 994. Current portion is the next year installment minus next year interest. Then how much is the non-current portion? 2,556,000 minus the current portion. So that is going to be 2,556,000 minus 994. 1,562,000. 1,562,000. Right? Okay. Right. Now, so I took all the important information, right? So I need to pass this entry, the lease liability, the lease interest, and added to the lease liability. So make a mangatta. And debited to the lease liability, I removed it from here and credited to the lease payment. Meaning lease payment taking oka kapala demma. Then the final lease liability value, I have separated it. How much is the current portion? How much is the non-current portion? එතකොට ළමයි ඔක තනියෙන් මේක මම එන්ට්‍රියක් විදිහට පාස් කරලා දැම්මොත් එහෙම මේ ලීස් ලයබිලිටි එකට දැන් මේක මම අර සෙපරේට් කරනවා ළමයි. මේකට එන්නේ for an example I had 3,460 no, right? I'm going to add interest 346 minus the lease payment 1,250. Then you will arrive at a figure of 2,556. That I have to separate. The current portion is 994 and the non-current portion is 1,562. Okay, that is what I have done here, right? 3,460 added the interest, removed the installment, and final balance is 2,556, right? That I divided the current and the non-current portion. So let me pass the entries now. I make entries pass right? The current portion is 994,000, right? How I arrived at figure, right? 1,250,000 minus 256. How much is the non-current portion, right? 2,556,000 minus 994,000, 1,562. 1,562, right? Okay. So I have done the lease liability, current and the non-current portion. I can put the lease interest lamai, which is 346. 346. 346. Right? Okay. Please take down your answers. Super. Right. Okay. Lamai, there are plenty of other questions you are asking. This is the next year interest, next year installment. From the next year installment, you are deducting the next year interest to arrive at the next year capital repayment. Right. So final thing that I have to do, right? I have to use a let me erase part of it. Right? So finally I have to do the depreciation calculation, right? Okay, I'll do it here itself. Okay, right? Now look at the question here, right? No other entry has been made. The first and lease installment. Here it says, Lamai, the lease period is 5 years, as well as your economic useful life is also 5 years. So both are the same, no? So you can depreciate over the useful life. Right? So even if the ownership transfers or not, that doesn't make any difference. So we can calculate the depreciation. We can calculate the depreciation level, right? Sorry, I need to add the lease value. This 2,346,000. That is my bad. I make it entry. Sorry. 3,460,000. You need to pass an entry, right? Debited to right of use asset, credited to lease liability, right? Lease liability right of use asset, sorry, right? So the lease value, lease liability value, debited to right of use asset, credited to lease liability. So I have to add that here, 3,460. So my bad, right? Please take down that one, this entry. I missed this one, right? Sorry. Right, debited to right of use asset, credited to lease liability 3,460. So now you have to calculate the depreciation. So that is simply cost divided by useful life, right? Cost divided by useful life. So how much is the cost? 2.5 million plus 3,460, that is 5,960 divided by 5. So the value is going to be 5,960 divided by 5 is going to be 1,192 1,000. So you know the double entry, debited to depreciation, credited to accumulated depreciation. So you'll pass a double entry, debited to depreciation, 1,192,000, credited to accumulated depreciation, 1,192,000. So you will arrive at the answer. Very good. 4,768,000 here. So that's it. That's the answer, right? 4,768,000, the right of use asset, and the liabilities will be 1,562,000 and 994,000, and the P&L figures is going to be a depreciation minus 192,000, 1,192,000, and the lease interest 346,000. Right? Please take down the answers. Lamai, right? Okay, right. So answer the previous 2020 question doesn't have a down payment. Yeah, in the previous question we didn't have a down payment, Lamai. So in this question we have a down payment. That is always depends on the agreement, right? Okay, right, now my time is up, right? Time is up, guys. How can I contact you for the next classes? Okay, I'll have to. Now, regarding the session, so my name is Sandeepa, right? So regarding the session, I would really be grateful if you can share your thoughts, whether it was good or bad, right? Whether it is good or bad, whether you have any, whether you have any suggestions or whatever, that is okay. So you can always contact me, right? So please share your thoughts, right? Whether it is good, whether it is bad, right? Ona deyak ebanda gal muguru mal pokuru, yeah, right? Okay. So please feel free to share your thoughts. So leasing part more or less lamai complete. So only thing is I have to do maybe another session where I might couple up with revenue standard maybe, right? I'll share you the dates. Please stay in the Telegram